Now let's go to business, and we have the keynote speaker, our keynote speaker, Professor Paul Crichard. He's Chief Security Technology Strategist at BT. He works at both sides of the operational cybersecurity world, responsible for both offensive security and incident responses. Paul is currently working with a number of incubators and venture capitalists around the world in the security technology, and having also a previous role at the BT as a security CTO. And currently he's working fellow at the British Computer Society, and also he's one of our colleagues as a visiting professor at the University of Gloucestershire. The whole idea of having this symposium is we'd like to hear from such an expert like you, Paul, about what are the solutions you are providing as big organization to secure talented skills, and how do you train them? So we need to work together. It's not only with you, Paul, with all our visitors, our speakers today, to try to reduce the gap and working closely more to find innovative solutions to promote, to make our student employable and up to standard in the market. So I'm not going to spend more time. Paul, please, we would like to hear from you, and the mic is yours now. Thank you very much, Paul.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's well today. When I was asked to do this keynote, one of the questions that I kind of went through in my head is to actually identify what do we mean by skills, because we're here to talk about skills, talking about what that means to us going forwards. And I kind of came to the conclusion that actually skills mean different things to different people. For me, I'm a technologist. I've always been a technologist. I've been in operations. I've done things. I've got my hands dirty. So when I think of skills, my first thing is I go to the technical skills. I can build a server. I can write code. I can do all those things. But it equally can be the soft skills, the interactions with people. But what we don't often say is we don't often talk about what definition that is to each other. We don't actually go to our HR department, for example, in global business and go, actually, this is what I mean by skills. This is how I define what that means to everybody. And as we got through that, that got me thinking that actually my perception of what that is almost the critical story that I wanted to talk about today. And I've been lucky over the last 15, 20 years to work in security. I've worked with small companies, startups, one or two people, all the way through to some of the biggest companies in the world, names that you will literally see every single day: Samsung, Honda, Ford, and literally every finance institution seems to cross my realm at some point or other, as well as, of course, BT itself. And for those that I then kind of reached out to when this keynote came around, I have to say thank you. Without my colleagues, my friends, including a couple on this very call today, they're the ones that give me that clarity, because I can only see things from one point of view, from my point of view. Without the help, without the community around you, we're always going to have that kind of slightly singular vision. So where do I start? I'll start at the top. I'll start at the director levels, the leadership, the ones that we look to steer the way that we want the world to work. And I speak to a lot of them that know what they want from things. They know they want to get somewhere. They've got this kind of end strategy that I want to achieve, but they don't always know what that means. They might go, I want some security analysts. I want to go and find these people that are going to look after my security operations center. But they don't always understand that they're going to look for those people that love finding patterns in things. They want to find those people who are like digging into situations and being able to deal with that kind of unknown at all points. They know that they want that analyst, but they don't always know quite what that means. And what they then don't realize is when they've found them, that there's going to be a certain reaction that those people are going to have when you're kind of in normal working mode. I've got this analyst, they're the best in the world, they're fantastic, but he keeps asking me questions over and over again about little decisions we've made. Oh, they're so frustrating. And you realize that actually it's that's just what they do. You've recruited this person, this individual, to have that kind of want to know attitude. And yet when they ask you that question, or they challenge you in the smallest things, it's because they're displaying those behaviors that we're looking for, those key elements that make those people valuable in their job. Why are people surprised when you recruit a junior analyst, a junior penetration tester, and they start playing with the corporate server? Well, unless you've told them to not do that, they're going to start looking at things. They start going to investigate what things look like. It is in their nature, and it is what you actually want them for. So the one thing that I'm always conscious to talk to directors and senior leadership is beware and understand what those things look like. And if you build a world that is inclusive, and it's a big word today, that word inclusive, if we get it right, then it doesn't matter effectively where your positive skills are, where your negative skills are. Then it's a world that accepts and move on. So we want ourselves to be challenged by these people, by these individuals that you bring on board to make your world better. I expect my team to ask me difficult questions. If they don't understand my decision, or they don't know what's going on, I want them to ask me. And if I make a call and make a statement and there's some errors in it, I want them to be telling me. Yes, sometimes they can be difficult, but I'll take that because I'd rather build it in a positive sense to say that we're all moving forward. I'm probably an unusual person in that space, but that's the challenge that we have to lay down to all our leadership, that actually sometimes those questions that are going to come back to you perhaps are a little bit kind of challenging for you. We have to be good for that as long as it's for the right reason. And that brings us to acceptance. That brings us to that kind of understanding that that I'm going to take on that information. I'm going to understand that the connection that I've made with that individual is going to help me move forwards. And that's probably the hardest thing there is to do for a leader, for a director or a high-end leadership, because they want to be fast-moving, they want to be really dynamic, and they want to be assertive. Well, those two things don't always work quite so well together. But assertiveness and strength and power doesn't always come from enforcing something on somebody. So I'm very open to those kind of conversations, and I challenge every leader to be the same. I want to create those kind of balance between people. They know I am effectively I am the leader that is going to take them there first, but equally I'm a leader who will listen first. I'm a technologist at heart, and although a lot of my team are technologists too, it often means they're a bit unusual. If I want a technologist, for example, who is going to delve into the technology, I have one working for me now, and all he does is he takes technology apart. And when I set him a challenge, that's the first thing he does. He pulls it apart, he understands how it works, he connects it all back together again. But I need to also understand that if I change his direction, I need to be really understanding of he's probably going to be still pulled back on that old thing because he's still not going to let it go. And it's just about understanding what that person's going to do. And I accept that because I accept that the depth of information that I'm going to get from him when I want of it is going to be weighed by the fact that sometimes he won't let go. Absolutely understandable. But what we often see in global business especially is managers and leaders who try that. They say they do that. But the reality is when it comes to hard or stressful moments, they just push people away. They don't use that acceptance. They don't use it actually as a positive attitude. So I'll give you a new example. So there's an individual who I know very well. He's incredibly cerebral. a very good environment for academia. He's a very clever individual. He loves knowing what's going on. He's always into geopolitics, and he knows everything to such a fine level. Incredible person when you want to go and talk to about this. However, if you put him into an environment by which perhaps there is slightly less knowledge, he can be viewed as very knowledgeable, kind of almost too knowledgeable. And his view is very opinionated, or could appear that way. But what I understand from him is actually he'll just follow what everybody else wants him to do. All he's trying to do is make sure other people are informed accordingly. And when you understand what the goal is underneath that, you can move forward towards that acceptance. What we don't want to do is treat them like they're sticking their nose into things that are not wanted, or they're not part of the change forward. If we go wrong with those, the first thing they'll do is exit, or they'll move away from you, or whatever it happens to be, they won't work the way that they should do. So again, acceptance being the key. Okay, the next bit, and this is one that has been a quandary for mine for many years, and that's recruitment. And I have a bit of a thing about recruitment, and I don't know about anybody else, but when you're looking for new teams, new people, you have to go through a set of procedures. Most organizations do. They follow a certain pathway so the right people are involved in that conversation. And let's kind of break that up, because if you break it up, it kind of makes a little bit of sense of why we get into some trouble. So the first one, as a manager, I need a post. I want to find a post. I need someone to do something. So I'm going to write that down. I have to find a way of writing that job down and define it into key points. So I want them to be able to do, I don't know, Python, Perl. I need them to have servers, or I need to be able to have a good orator. Whatever it happens to be, I'm going to write a list. So instantly, lists mean I'm going to hit certain flags. So I'm already starting to shrink the people who are going to be naturally involved in this. I'm then going to pass it across to the team who might go out and look for it. And that's going to be massaged a bit, because we want to make sure it's standardized. We want corporateness to be part of that kind of conversation. And some things might be taken out because we don't want to say what those kind of things are, or it's represented in the wrong way. Again, what we've now done, we've squished it again. So although we've got this lovely, beautiful image when we start, we're now getting smaller and smaller as people are taking chunks out of that kind of image that we're after. Then we send it out to recruitment. We put on a website, and the people going for it are going to represent that in one way. They're going to read it and go, well, actually, that might be for me. It might not be for me. And you've got to, hopefully, those people are going to read it the way that you intended it to be when you wrote it at the beginning. Or it might go to an agency. If we go to an agency, for example, they're going to spend their life running through thousands of CVs. They're going to go through their database. And what they're going to do, they're going to hunt for the buzzwords. They're going to work for key words out of that kind of CV and go, A plus B, therefore they must be good. Well, hang on, those A plus B conversations are just translations of what the original manager actually wanted. So are they going to be correct? Have you interpreted those words right? Back to what I said about the skills at the beginning. Interpretation and understanding is key here. So one thing that I'm really keen to challenge when it comes to recruitment is don't use those wordsmith kind of ideas. Don't necessarily kind of drive within that kind of conversation, because what you naturally do is those who can write CVs or can write against that terms of reference that they're talking to will come out better. And if the job is about that, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. Exactly what you want. But if I don't want it, and if I look at some of the red teamers that I work with today, for example, some of them have real challenges writing structured English, because all they spend their life in is code. They spend their life at terminal windows or literally wiring diagrams. So hang on, if I want someone to be that kind of specific in the way that they do their job, why am I expecting them to then write a CV that is in my language? It's not going to work. So we have to start looking between the lines. It's not just about the experience of where people have been, but the way people think within that. And that's what I'm really after. as I started this keynote with, it's behaviors that I'm looking for. Because there are some a lot of technical skills that can be learned. We have huge number of assets around training. We have startups in the Southwest region who are absolutely amazing at it. So we need to understand that actually those technical skills, if you put the people in the right environment, are going to be able to pick those things up, but only therefore if they have the behaviors to go with it. And that balance is where we should be looking for our recruiters, our new talent acquisition is going to be. Because if we're then looking for those trends of how people are going to use the data or what they're going to do in the real world, then that's going to get me to the recruits that I'm really, really after. And again, another story. I was looking for a reverse engineer in one of my roles. Someone who just has that inquisitive nature. And I have friends that sit across in the US, for example, who've been doing this for years. And I tell you, I wouldn't get them to write a CV in a million years because they just don't work like that. That's not how their brain works. So when I wrote the job description, I put things in like binary reversal, assembly, Python, and I'm sure many people are switching off going, I have no idea what he's talking about. And that's my point. When you then pass it through to the point who's going to go and recruit, they're going, I have no idea if this is any good. I have no idea what it looks like because it's just blah. And that's the difficult part. It's just noise to people. So one thing I did add to my job description was a big section on those behaviors. How did I want people to act? How do I want to understand what they're going to do in terms of a challenge? And when they came to see me, when I brought them to interview, I actually opened that up and challenged them to do it. A few fun games, something like, hey, can you read this? And it's perhaps in a code language like assembly, or going to get them to do their job a little bit. Now, one of the good games that we used to play was to make people write the Fibonacci sequence in code. Hey, for those who think I know what the Fibonacci is, it's easy. But writing that in code is actually quite complicated. Trying to work out where you're going to stop the number or how you're going to add those things up. So you have to think about it kind of quite laterally when you come to that. And that's the process that I'm after, that thought ticking through to get me to the answer. Now, if I hadn't done those two things and done it in a different way, what I'd also have got is a very kind of non-technical people, because they would have been the CV writers, not necessarily the ones that know what they're doing. And as it happens, I managed to end up with some very interesting individuals, including an ex-welder and a ballroom dance teacher. That's not a bad combination of people that I wouldn't have naturally picked. And then kind of moving on to the final part of this kind of story, it's about the individuals. It's about those coming through, those looking for the new jobs. And equally, it could be the leaders out there. It could be those starting their careers. It could be them looking to join an area of cyber, for example, and trying to understand what those things are going to look like for me. So what am I going to leave the message for them for? Well, first of all, cyber is all over the place. It's all encompassing these days. There's almost doesn't go a news article these days without some form of cyber being relevant in there today. It could be something related to blockchain on one moment. It can be physical security the other. We're now seeing, of course, things like the colonial pipeline breach, which is now having physical effects to people. So we're now starting to see different ways that this is kind of reacting to the world. And it happens to us even on a day-to-day level. We look at parental controls on devices today. Is that working the right way? Are we doing it in the way that helps children and the new generation understand technology, but equally keep them safe? And those things need to be kind of part of that conversation. So what am I going to say to the next level? Well, the first one, have some self-assurance. I know that's hard to say. It's easy for me to say and harder to be done. But the more you get stuck in, the more you can learn. And as this group and wider groups show, there is a very, very strong community in cybersecurity, both in Gloucestershire, in the UK and globally, who will all reach out. When I asked for help at the beginning writing this keynote, The people I spoke to were on 4 continents. So they're all around the world. They all reached out. They all gave me ideas of what to do. And part of that is around making sure that everybody is part of that story. It's making sure if you are looking to move across and you're not in cyber today, reach out to those who you think are like you, for example, because that's the first step. But also reach out to those who aren't, because a lot of those in cybersecurity today will bring you into that community. And that's one of the strands that I'm very passionate about making sure as we move forward as a community, it includes that community. As much as I've said those behaviors and those things, those directions from the leadership, it needs to understand that actually it's understanding all the different types of people and literally being able to include them that makes the difference to move forwards towards acceptance, and also to make it easier for those new individuals joining us. But as you start that journey, if you have the assurance that you can go out there and ask for help and ask for guidance, then that will help you into that space. Twitter is always alive with people who go, how do I get in? How do I move into this space? And you'll just be staggered the number of people who will stand up and go, hey, here's a good resource for you. Have you looked at this? Have you tried this course? It's free. Or, hey, direct message me later. I'll talk to you about what that could be. And the number of people who do that is just amazing. Self-confidence is the next bit. And it's the bit for me that is the hardest one to A, get people to understand, B, for people to take on board, and C, as an individual who, and let's be honest, I'll be surprised if anyone this call doesn't have a level of imposter syndrome, that to have the confidence that actually I do know what I'm talking about. I always personally take confidence when I get asked to do these kind of things, these events, and people come to me and ask, because otherwise I just think, are people listening? Do people care what I think? Oh, I'll just be quiet. I'll just keep my kind of light under a bushel a little bit. But I realize over time, actually, I have something to add, and I really would like to do that. And that is true to everybody. We're all individuals. We all have a unique perspective, and that perspective is valuable. It's just how we use it that's the interesting challenge. So what do I do? So what do they say in terms of self-confidence? Well, first of all, you need to be aware of what you are and where you want to be. Those are 2 kind of primary steps. So who am I? What skills do I have? I, for example, I'd like to think I'm very good at dealing with very disparate information. My data can be from any source, anywhere, and somehow I can draw lines between things. That means for businesses, for startups, that kind of world, I'm actually pretty good at predicting where they're going to be. I have some fairly good success stories in there. A certain name of a company I've been connected to for about 5 or 6 years called CrowdStrike. Many of you might know who they are. I've been involved with kind of talking to their seniors for many years on that kind of conversation. I've got 3 or 4 that I talk to now on the kind of same pathway. Hey, not everything's perfect. They don't all succeed. But what it's interesting to do is to kind of help people understand, hey, this is where it looks like that information is going to send us. So I'm very lucky on that. What does that mean? I also know that I'm real. There are some places out there that I'm not quite so good at. I don't suffer fools gladly is the phrase. I really value people who understand and want to get better, who want to kind of understand and have a conversation. Those who close themselves off to that, I can be slightly difficult with. And that's my development. And I'll be absolutely clear that that's the world that we live in. Everybody has upsides and everybody has downsides. And as we go through life, obviously, those downsides become slightly less easy to see, hopefully. So the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is to go out and ask for help. Try and get that experience. If you haven't got it now and you think you haven't got a first step into cyber, or you haven't got that step to be the senior level that you want to be, go and ask for help. No one is ever in the wrong place who can't have guidance. I have always had a mentor for all the way through my professional career. Today I have 2. I have a technical one from a perspective of business elements and things like that. I have another one in terms of how to represent people, how to deal with kind of the global beast that is around relationships, because I want to find the best from the best people. So I still go out there and look for those supportive natures, because otherwise, how am I going to get better? And I always strive to be better. I always want to find people who are open and honest. I don't want to find those people who are doing it for their own value, and there are lots of them out there. And I think we've all been bitten by them, who are only there to actually gain their own advantage, and they're all good in their own places. Businesses can gain value from that, but be prepared for those kind of individuals. And actually, they're also a good learning lesson to be, because actually they can be helpful in other ways to understand how they get where they are. And ultimately, as I kind of mentioned earlier, we need to accept our, well, let's be honest, twirly bits, the bits of us that perhaps we're not quite so happy at admitting, the ability to kind of annoy certain people, or the fact that we can't sing and yet we love to sing in the shower, things like that. We all have them. We all need to be understanding. But equally, there are roles for everybody. It's one of the things that I love outside work. I love cricket, I love rugby, both of which are sports for everybody. And that's the bit that I love about them. They're inclusive. I'm not a small person. I'm quite tall, I'm quite large, so obviously rugby is my world. But equally, we have spaces for the slightly shorter. We call them scrum halves in rugby. But those things are true in the cyber world too. We have all sorts of roles, and as cyber becomes more prevalent in our world, that's only growing. 10, 15 years ago, all we had was penetration testers or network defense. That was it. That's all we spoke about. Now we've got security operations teams, we've got incident responders, we've got red teamers, we've got forensics, we've got e-discovery, we've got architects, we've got cloud specialists. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on and on. And it's all getting the maximum out of those kind of worlds. But it won't stop there. And this is where I come to the prediction part. A lot of my job is strategy and where the world is coming to. So I couldn't go without at least kind of looking towards that future. Where are we going to sit? And one thing I really, really believe is going to happen in the next few years, especially, is those roles, those technologists kind of capabilities that we're talking about today are not going to be about purely cyber anymore. Although we're going to still have space for them, the real value is actually being able to put them in conjunction with other things. That could be about human enablement. Education, for example, is a great example of that. It's not just about learning the material, it's about getting those individuals to pick it up and understand it fully. But it's also, when we come to security spaces, it could be, hang on, I'm really good at analyzing the data, so I'm a SOC analyst, but the other half of me might be really good at IT. Or it could even be about law, or it could be about HR. It doesn't matter. We're seeing a lot of these crossover spaces where you're effectively dual-hatted. And actually, I think that's where the world is going to be. In pure technology terms, we look at things like cloud technology. Well, use of cloud technology is great, but if you don't have it in conjunction with security, you're going to be in trouble. The same goes in network space. Networks changing in the world with 5G coming on board. We've got things called SD-WAN out there. All the world of networking is changing. Well, again, it's an opportunity for security to help that move forward. And that's where the world of cyber really should be. The days of security saying no have left. We have not got that anymore. We should be promoting the business moving faster, quicker, easier, making it easier for that human to be what they naturally need to be. And although it's about our skills and how we use those things, it's about challenging the way that we interpret and we promote those things, because that's the way that we need to be. So I'm coming around to that full summary now, and kind of almost back to Ali in a second, but the key story for everybody, for me, to take out of this is that cyber values people who are able to deal and understand the unknown, the kind of those spaces where people aren't quite clear about what's going on. They deal with that, they move on it, they thrive on it. but it's a great place to be. But there is one thing that is always true in our world: change. Be part of it. Don't be blocking it. Back to you, Ali.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this lecture or the information you share with us. It's a personal experience. It's something from your organization. It's something we cannot read in a book or a paper or even in an article, and that is the purpose of having speakers like you. I have in the Q&A many questions. I'm gonna start share the question with you, but before that, it's I think to summarize, you started to talk about the skills and the personality. People, they have assertiveness, some leadership, change management. You expect from them some depth in the information, positive attitude. And you mentioned about the recruitment, and sometimes recruitment, it's not, yeah, we have to follow that, but we have to be smart enough to pick the right person. But you are after, and even us at the university, the behavior. All the things you mentioned about people, it's about people. The example you mentioned is exactly, we have it as a student, and onward, then it's going to be an employee, one of the employees. Sorry. So yeah, the behavior, people, the proactivity. And you advise that people, they have to be self-assurance. And the more you stuck in a problem, the more you learn. And also you mentioned that there is a space for everybody, and this is a very positive message from such an expert like you, Paul. So let me start with the first question from. Some of the question, it has a name, some of them is anonymous. So from Luke, he said, "Hi Paul, I was reading recently how COVID has impacted both education grade prediction and businesses hiring, but to shift to the video chatting and the prediction of people trying to perform better in interview and public display. How would you recommend that, and how would you recommend as a program to push past the barrier? Do you even think this is an issue worth discussing?" So Paul, that's your, yeah.
Wow, that's a massive question, a great one, and it is challenging. Let's be honest. This world is challenging for all of us. We feel disconnected a lot of the time. And what I've seen is there's been two reactions to COVID, really, from and I'll do from the business, and then I'll go into the individual, if that's okay, very quickly. So businesses have either kind of frozen and gone, I'm gonna do it the way I've always done it, and that means I have really desire to go back to the office, and every chance they got, they kind of act like they're in the office. For me, the world's moved on. I don't like that. I don't think it's the world that's going to be. Others are now taking this world as an opportunity. The use of Teams and Zoom, it's a massive opportunity for a business. If you think, especially the really big businesses spend a fortune on locations. Why? Just let people be at home. People love being at home. One thing you need to be aware of, especially there, is those who need guidance. Those who work on their own, like myself, for example. I thrive at home. I love it. It's easy. I can control my world. I still go into the office once a week where I can, because I need that interaction. I'm an extrovert, if you hadn't guessed, and therefore that's what feeds me. So I need to understand that kind of world. So you need to businesses need to understand what that means, and that could mean it's going to cost you more in people going to different offices. But actually, you need to understand that they aren't going to be sat next to you, and you've got to look at all your procedures, and what you've naturally assumed is going to happen is going to be different in a remote kind of world. For individuals, you need to communicate more. And the big one about for me, this is informal communication, not the formality. Obviously, we've got teams that you can do sort of formal, kind of halfway house kind of conversations. You've got your email that's very formal, tells you facts. Teams is very, have a little kind of almost to save those short emails back and forwards, but you need the personal touches because that's what really bonds you. If you can't meet individuals, have that kind of informal communications as well. And I think it's that part, be human, be real, that is the bit that you need to understand, because we don't necessarily have that one-to-one relationships that we would do physically now. So if you can push on that, I think that's what will turn the dial. Any more, Ali?
Yes, we have more questions than the time, so I do apologize if I missed some of the questions in advance. So the next question, Paul, that said, it's from Anonymous. It's BT seems to be in a prime position to block, chase, advise, or even work against cyber crimes. What improvement can be made to help the most vulnerable people, like elderly, young, computer, stay safer online? So that is the. It's about what is the BT doing with this? Yeah.
A lot is the answer to that, and it's almost so big. It's incredible. So we'll start at the legal side of the house and go. We work with most of the national and international police services, for example. We're really close to the UK police forces, but equally we do things like even in our research division, for example, look through the blockchain. So when certain hacks occur and people are using Bitcoin to do the payment of ransoms, we track that. We keep an eye on it because it's interesting analytical material. And when we find results, that goes straight through to Interpol or Europol, whichever it happens to be, to work with them on those kind of conversations. We also block huge amounts of malicious activity on our normal broadband. And not many consumers know that. So there's huge bits of that you never see, but we do automatically because BT feels that actually it's our responsibility to take that attitude. So there's that part. The harder part is the next bit, is about creating the intelligent cyber consumer, or that's what I call it anyway, is creating a need to understand what security is like. And it's the hardest part of the job. And we have been trying little bits of this for years. The difficulty is because we're a business, we also need to kind of offset that with a little bit of how do we make it an opportunity for us? And that's where it gets really tough, because one thing that's really hard for when we talk cybersecurity is it's a technical question. It's a technical conversation. If you go and talk to your gran about cybersecurity, they'll doze off in a second. They've just got lost them. So the fact that you're talking to them about PIN numbers or not sharing your email or not clicking links, they're not really going to play with it because they don't see why. So we need to change our language again. We talk about privacy a lot in this space. And are we fully where we need to be as a community? No, we still need to make more pushing into that kind of space. So we work really hard about that education piece. We've put a huge amount of effort into the computing skills within the next generation. I'm sure everybody would have seen the details that came out through during the COVID kind of startup, the investment we made in that. That has been joined by security as well. So we work on, when we talk about computer skills, we also make sure security is in there. So we are actively trying to put a lot of effort into that, trying to move that far forward. And ultimately, we invest in the next generation. I have my time available to help the universities out. And although I'm a fellow of the University of Gloucestershire, I also help 7 or 8 other universities out as well. So I'm able to do those kind of things. So huge amounts of effort, huge amounts of work in there. Is there more to do for us, all of us? Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. A question is coming a lot, but we're gonna stick with the time. The third question is from John Andreas. He said, as a secondary school teacher, I'm agreeing with Luke's question. It's about, we have a a successive generation of governments, we have been the importance of the project works in computer science reduced to now 12.5%. Please, can you, as an industrial influencer, to return to at least a third of an A-level GCSE content? So it's about school now.
I absolutely feel that. I can't. I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and strangely, she's pretty good at computer science. She likes playing with stuff as much as I do. So for me, it's wonderful. But absolutely, I completely agree with you with we need to put more into that. I'm also conscious that the way some of these things are constructed don't always help the different mindsets, the different individuals. We seem to get highlighting certain types of people come through very easily, and yet some of the cyber capabilities that I kind of spoke about earlier aren't always selected for, aren't always making it enjoyable. We're doing a lot with things like with GCHQ and NCSC around things like cyber first, making sure that we are getting involved in those things. So absolutely get involved in those kind of things. There are other opportunities out there. For example, look beyond the UK if you can. For example, I know we have Raytheon with us today, for example, talking. They have some very strong capabilities over in the US that's available. There's a University of Carnegie Mellon, for example, that there's something called PICO CTF. It's aimed at schools. So if we can start by giving resources out and helping teachers like yourself move forward. But equally, one of the things that we do need to do, and we do this all the time, is try and lobby government where possible, and try and persuade them it's the way to do. I know one of the colleagues on this call, Reed Darby's in that space as well. We try and change the world and kind of get that better. I completely agree with you, and we do have to keep pushing to get that done. So we are doing that, and we will continue to.
Thank you very much. We still have time to couple of questions. Next question is from Dan Cannon. He said, "Hi Paul, really interesting to hear about how you have benefited from mentors, and how do you think we as an industry can provide that kind of benefit to people? Trying to get into the industry and give people the chance to understand where their strengths will be of a great value."
Hi, Danny. Good to see you. Good to hear you on this on this call. Yeah, it's a difficult one because there are quite a few people who like talking about these things, and actually it's not hard to get hold of them, especially on Twitter these days. And in Gloucestershire, we actually and around there's quite a few of us. It's a very strong environment, and it's very good for community action, community work. So, as the Vice Chancellor said earlier, places like Cynam are exceptional. They're always opening the door to people. I listen myself, so I'm not closed to that. And now and again, they even ask me to talk. And I think it's trying to get out to those kind of things is the best way to find the people who you look towards and what skills that you're after to do. And what I really ask of those is more about the wider leadership, is get involved with those more, because if you don't, you don't. The new blood coming through can't touch those new mentors, can't get involved in that, because you just need it. It's so, as an individual, get out there. It's the only thing I can suggest. We can't come to you all the time. I'm sorry, we only have so much time in our world, but reach out. We are there to be to guide, and for the leaders out there, make time to be available.
Thank you. I've been told we have to close the session at 10:03, so we still have 5 minutes to get questions. So sorry, Paul, but we have a lot of questions. It's an interesting topic, and you are the person can answer these questions definitely. So the next question is, ongoing training in the lifeblood of cybersecurity teams. How much should companies spend training a cyber professional each year for ongoing development, or should the professional pay for that themselves? Paul?
Oh, some good questions today. I always like good questions. Yeah. It makes me think. I'm not going to put a figure on it. Is not what I won't do, because every business is different. You need to assess that against kind of what your goals and kind of opportunities are. I'm a big fan of a saying. I think it was attributed to Richard Branson, who says, "Treat people so they could leave. Sorry, train some people so they could leave, but treat them so they never want to." So that means more investment in people and things like that. And I look at some of the high-flying cyber companies, for example. They have a high proportion of training value. I remember one of them had almost 30% of their annual budget was in training for both courses, but also in individuals' time. That's high percentage, but what that drives is people always being inquisitive, always wanting to know more, and they become a sponge naturally through that investment. Some companies can't do that, and that's acceptable too. And you need to be smart about that. That's the bit that's really clever. Money can be used in different ways. So using some resources, things like LinkedIn Learning is very good. There's some excellent courses on there. And for certain types, that works. For other types, things like Pluralsight or Udemy, for example, again, digital resources kind of available out there. But then you can go to other things to test that, make those skills real with things like immersive labs or doing courses in SANS, for example. These are all just examples out there. So it's about being smart about that money. And equally, each person needs different value items. Some people who are very paper-based perhaps doesn't need so in-depth courses as others. I'm just using that as an example, but you have to balance it. It's where you have to kind of balance the kind of investment from the business side of things. How much money can we afford to pay for this? And also the personal development plans of each individual. I think if you get that right, that you always find somewhere in between there. And you almost need a slush fund, something that then says, actually, I plan for it in a big scale, but now and again, I'm just going to take a punt on one of these things. And that could be conferences or things like that, where you go meet communities, because that's a learning opportunity as well. Remember, it's not just about kind of courses, exams, and things like that. I also do think there's elements of kind of businesses should let people expand beyond what their job role is, not just in terms of professional kind of development going up an organization, but also sideways. And that comes with, again, a little bit of grey area, because they can't afford to let someone do everything, for example. It's not the time in the world. And then sometimes it is about kind of taking your own time. For example, I did a plumbing course not too long ago because I thought it'd be interesting. I want to know how it works. And that was mine. A business is never going to do that. And yet my coursework, the ones I did do at through work, was specific. I did loads on Azure cloud security, for example, because that's the thing that although it was interesting to me, there was actual technical value to the business. So there's always a balance to be had. Somewhere in between is a grey area, and I think it's almost person by person at that point.
Thank you very much, Paul. We do have more questions. Unfortunately, we reached to the end of the welcome session, and there will be opportunity to ask Paul questions at the end of the symposium during the discussion panel. And we have a couple of questions. We're going to escalate them to Paul. Thank you very much. Please join me to thank our keynote speaker, Paul Crichard. That was really valuable information, and we are lucky to have you today, Paul. Thank you very much, and we'll be in touch, of course, for future work and try to implement the innovative solutions you mentioned in your talk. Thank you very much.